The blinding flash of a gunshot split the air as Sarah Blackwood ducked behind the water trough, her heart hammering against her ribs. The year was 1878, and Willow Creek, Colorado was supposed to be her fresh start, not her final resting place. 3 men had followed her from the stagecoach, their intentions as clear as the mountain air. "Come on out, pretty lady," called a gruff voice. "We just want to talk." Sarah's fingers trembled as she reached for the small derringer hidden in her boot, the only possession from her old life she couldn't bear to part with. 4 years of running, and somehow they'd found her again. A second shot rang out, but this one wasn't aimed at her. A man's pained cry followed, then the sound of bodies scuffling. "That's no way to treat a lady, boys," came a deep, steady voice. "I suggest you find your horses and ride out before I lose my patience." More scuffling, curses, then retreating footsteps. Sarah peered cautiously around the water trough. A tall man stood in the dusty street, his stance relaxed but alert, a smoking Colt revolver held casually at his side. The sun caught in his sandy hair as he holstered his weapon and turned toward her hiding place. "They're gone, madam. Are you hurt?" Sarah straightened, brushing dirt from her travel-worn skirt. "I'm fine, thank you." She studied him, broad shoulders beneath a faded blue shirt, lean waist, leather chaps over denim, and a weathered cowboy hat pushed back to reveal kind eyes. "Name's Kieran Prescott," he said with a slight tip of his hat. "Ranch foreman at the Double Diamond, Sarah Blackwood," she replied, offering only that much. "I appreciate your assistance, Mr. Prescott, just doing what any decent man would." His eyes flickered to the small derringer still clutched in her hand. "Though it seems you might have handled things yourself given the chance." Sarah quickly tucked the gun away. "A woman traveling alone learns to be prepared. Smart thinking." He nodded toward the stagecoach office. "You new to Willow Creek?" "Yes, I'm to start as the schoolteacher next week." Something like approval warmed his eyes. "We've been without one for nearly 6 months. The children will be glad to see you." Before Sarah could respond, a portly man in a vest hurried toward them. "Miss Blackwood." "I'm Mayor Thompson. We expected you on tomorrow's coach. There was room on today's, so I took the opportunity," Sarah explained. "Well, I see you've met our Kieran," the mayor said jovially. "No finer man in the territory." Kieran's cheeks colored slightly under his tan. "I should be getting back to the ranch, Miss Blackwood." He tipped his hat again. "Welcome to Willow Creek." Sarah watched him stride away, something unsettled in her chest. Kindness was dangerous. It made people look closer, ask questions. And questions were the one thing Sarah Blackwood couldn't afford. "Let me show you to the schoolhouse," Mayor Thompson said, reaching for her bag. "It has living quarters attached, simple but comfortable." Sarah followed, her eyes scanning the town's single main street. It seemed peaceful enough: a general store, saloon, blacksmith, small church. Perhaps this time she could stay longer than a few months before her past caught up with her. But as she settled into the small room behind the schoolhouse that evening, unpacking her meager belongings, Sarah knew better than to hope. Hope was a luxury for people who deserved second chances. She'd forfeited hers long ago. The schoolhouse needed work: dusty shelves, broken desks, faded maps on the walls. Sarah spent the next 3 days cleaning and organizing, grateful for the distraction. On her 4th morning in Willow Creek, a knock at the schoolhouse door interrupted her as she arranged books on shelves. Kieran Prescott stood in the doorway, hat in hands, looking even taller than she remembered. "Mr. Prescott," she acknowledged, stepping back from the shelf. "Miss Blackwood." He gestured to a wagon outside. "The ranch owner's wife, Mrs. Crawford, heard we had a new schoolteacher. She sent some supplies: books, slate boards, chalk, even some curtains for the windows. That's exceedingly generous." "That's Mrs. Crawford," he smiled, revealing a small dimple in his right cheek. "Mind if I bring them in?" For the next hour, Kieran helped Sarah unload the supplies, hanging the cheerful yellow curtains and repairing 2 broken desks with tools he'd brought along. They worked mostly in silence, but it was comfortable rather than awkward. "You're good with your hands," Sarah observed as he finished fixing the last desk. Comes with ranch work, he replied, always something that needs fixing. He studied her for a moment. You've been busy in here. Place looks different already. It needed attention. Like most worthwhile things. His eyes held hers a moment too long and Sarah looked away first. I should get back to preparing lessons. School starts Monday. Kieran nodded, gathering his tools. The Crawford children will be among your students' twin boys, age 10. Handful doesn't begin to describe them. His smile was warm, but good kids at heart. I look forward to meeting them. At the door he paused. There's a social at the church Saturday evening. Welcome gathering for you, really. Might be a good chance to meet the parents. I'll consider it, Sarah said, though she had no intention of attending. Social gatherings meant questions, personal conversations, the risk of revealing too much. Hope to see you there, he said simply, and was gone. Sarah exhaled slowly, pressing a hand to her chest where an unfamiliar warmth had bloomed. Kieran Prescott was dangerous in ways those men with guns could never be. He made her want to stay. Monday arrived, bringing 26 children of various ages to the schoolhouse. Sarah found herself genuinely enjoying their eager faces and endless questions. Teaching had always been her passion, even before everything fell apart in Philadelphia. The Crawford twins were indeed spirited, but responded well to firm boundaries and the responsibility of helping younger students. By week's end, Sarah had established a routine and earned the respect of most of her charges. She was sweeping the schoolroom floor late Friday afternoon when Kieran appeared in the doorway again. Heard you've conquered the Crawford boys already, he said, leaning against the door frame. Mr. Crawford says they actually did their lessons without complaint last night. Sarah smiled despite herself. They're bright boys, they just need proper direction. And here I thought they needed a miracle. He stepped inside, setting a small basket on her desk. Mrs. Crawford sent preserves and fresh bread. She thinks you're too thin. Please thank her for me. You could thank her yourself at the social tomorrow. Sarah resumed her sweeping. I have lesson plans to prepare. One evening of relaxation won't hurt, he pressed gently. People are curious about you. I prefer to keep to myself, Mr. Prescott. Kieran, he corrected. And sometimes what we prefer isn't what we need. She looked up sharply. And what do you presume I need? Friends, he said simply. Connections, same as anyone new to a place. Sarah set the broom aside. I appreciate the concern, but I'm quite content with my own company. Kieran studied her for a long moment. You're running from something. It wasn't a question, and the accuracy of it sent ice through Sarah's veins. That's rather presumptuous. Maybe, he shrugged. Or maybe it takes one to know one. This surprised her. You, 5 years ago. He tapped his fingers absently on the door frame. Different circumstances, I'd wager, but I recognize the look. Always checking over your shoulder, keeping people at arm's length. Sarah said nothing, unwilling to confirm or deny. The social starts at 6, he said finally. I'll be by to escort you at 5:30 if you decide to come. He touched the brim of his hat. Good day, Miss Blackwood. Saturday evening found Sarah pacing her small quarters, glancing repeatedly at the clock. 5:20. He would be here soon, and she still hadn't decided whether to go. She'd put on her best dress, a modest blue calico with white trim, almost without thinking. A knock came at precisely 5:30. Sarah took a deep breath and opened the door. Kieran stood there in clean clothes, his hair damp and combed, hat in hand. He'd shaved, and the clean line of his jaw made him look younger. You look lovely, he said. I haven't decided to go, she replied, though her appearance suggested otherwise. Fair enough. He didn't look discouraged, but I'll wait, just in case. Something about his patient confidence broke through her resolve. Very well, Mr. Prescott, I suppose I should meet the parents properly. The social was held in the churchyard, with tables laden with food and lanterns strung between trees. Sarah was introduced to what seemed like the entire town, names blurring together as she shook hands and exchanged pleasantries. To her surprise, she found herself enjoying the evening. The townspeople were genuinely welcoming without being intrusive. When Mrs. Crawford insisted she try every dish on the dessert table, Sarah laughed and complied, earning an approving smile from Kieran. As dusk deepened into night, someone produced a fiddle, and couples began to dance in the cleared area near the church steps. Sarah watched from the sidelines, content to observe until Kieran appeared at her elbow. "May I have this dance, Miss Blackwood?" she hesitated. "I'm not sure that would be appropriate. I'm the schoolteacher, and I'm the ranch foreman. We're both allowed some recreation." He extended his hand, his expression open and warm. "Just one dance." Sarah placed her hand in his, telling herself it was merely politeness. But when his arm circled her waist and he guided her into the simple waltz, something shifted inside her. He moved with surprising grace for such a tall man, leading confidently but gently. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said, his voice low. "I suppose I needed the distraction." His eyes caught hers. "Is that all it is, a distraction?" "What else would it be? A beginning, perhaps." Sarah missed a step. "Mr. Prescott, Kieran," he corrected again. "Kieran," she conceded. "Whatever you're thinking, whatever you're hoping for, it isn't possible. Why not?" "Because some things can't be outrun forever," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. His hand tightened slightly on hers. "Whatever it is, Sarah, you don't have to face it alone." The intimacy of her first name on his lips was too much. Sarah pulled away. "Thank you for the dance. I should be going." She made her excuses to Mrs. Crawford and the mayor, aware of Kieran watching her from across the churchyard. The night air was cool as she hurried back to the schoolhouse, confusion and frustration warring inside her. How dare he presume to understand her situation? How dare he offer help when he knew nothing of what she'd done? Yet, beneath her indignation lurked something more frightening: the temptation to trust him, to unburden herself of the secret that had driven her from city to city for 4 long years. Sarah was still awake at dawn, lesson plans abandoned on her small table. The sound of horses in the street drew her to the window. 3 men rode slowly past the schoolhouse, their eyes scanning the buildings. They weren't the same men from her arrival day, but they had the same watchful air. Bounty hunters, her heart sank. It was happening again. She would need to leave immediately. Sarah packed quickly, taking only what would fit in a single bag. She left a note for the mayor, apologizing for her sudden departure and citing a family emergency. As she stepped out the back door of the schoolhouse, the morning sun was just cresting the eastern hills. She made it to the edge of town before a voice stopped her. "Going somewhere." Kieran sat atop his horse at the crossroads, looking as if he'd been waiting for some time. "How did you know?" Sarah asked, clutching her bag tighter. "Saw those men ride in at first light, recognized the type." He dismounted, approaching slowly as if she might bolt. "What are they after you for, Sarah?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." "It shouldn't." She tried to step past him, but he gently caught her arm. "Let me help you. You can't. Try me." The sincerity in his eyes was her undoing. After 4 years of running and hiding, of trusting no one, something in Sarah Blackwood cracked open. "I was engaged," she began haltingly. "In Philadelphia, to the son of a prominent banker. Edward seemed kind at first, charming, but after we were engaged he changed, became controlling, jealous." Kieran listened silently, his face grave. "When I tried to break the engagement, he threatened me. Said I'd ruined his reputation, that I owed him." Sarah swallowed hard. "One night he came to my home drunk. My father was away. Edward tried to force himself on me. Sarah, I fought back. There was a letter opener on the desk. I didn't mean to." She closed her eyes against the memory. "I wounded him, not fatally, but enough to scare me. I ran. His father has been sending men after me ever since, claiming I attempted murder. The banker has friends in high places, connections with Pinkerton detectives." "So you've been running for 4 years, Kieran said softly. "Changing towns, changing names," Sarah nodded, exhaustion washing over her. "No matter where I go, they eventually find me. And now they've found you here." "Yes, so I need to leave." Kieran was quiet for a long moment, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Or you could stop running." "That's not an option." It is if we clear your name, Sarah laughed bitterly. How? It's my word against a powerful banker's family. You'd be surprised what can happen when people stand together against injustice. Kieran took her bag from her unresisting hands. Come with me to the ranch. You'll be safe there while we figure this out. People in this town care about you already, Sarah. The mayor, Mrs. Crawford, the children, me. His eyes held hers. Let us help. I can't ask that of you. You're not asking, I'm offering. Sarah hesitated, torn between ingrained caution and desperate hope. Those men will come looking. Let them try. Kieran's jaw set firmly. The Double Diamond isn't an easy place to ride into uninvited. 2 hours later, Sarah found herself in the cozy main house of the Double Diamond Ranch, where Mrs. Crawford fussed over her while Kieran conferred with Mr. Crawford in the study. The older woman asked no questions, simply provided hot tea and gentle conversation until Sarah's nerves began to settle. When Kieran finally emerged from the study, his expression was determined. Mr. Crawford is sending a telegram to a judge he knows in Denver, he explained. And another to a newspaper editor in Philadelphia who owes him a favor. We're going to get to the truth. Just like that, Sarah couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. No, not just like that. It will take time and probably get messy. Kieran sat beside her at the kitchen table. But we start by standing our ground. For the next week, Sarah stayed at the ranch, teaching the Crawford twins and helping Mrs. Crawford with household tasks to keep busy. Kieran rode into town daily, returning with news. The bounty hunters had been asking questions but meeting a wall of silence from the townspeople. Mayor Thompson had informed them that the schoolteacher had left for Denver, sending them on a false trail. The Telegraph brought word from Philadelphia today, Kieran announced one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner. Edward Harrington has a history of violent behavior toward women. 2 other fiancés before you, both paid to keep quiet. Sarah's hands trembled in her lap. I didn't know. The newspaper editor is preparing a story gathering testimonies. Kieran's voice was gentle but firm. You're not alone in this anymore, Sarah. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah slipped outside to gaze at the stars. The vastness of the night sky had always brought her comfort, a reminder of how small her troubles were in the grand scheme of things. But tonight, the thought only highlighted her isolation. Couldn't sleep either. She turned to find Kieran approaching, a blanket draped over his arm. Too many thoughts, she admitted. He offered the blanket, which she gratefully wrapped around her shoulders against the night chill. Sometimes I think it would be easier to just keep running, Sarah said quietly. Simpler than facing it all. Easier maybe, but no way to live. Kieran leaned against the porch railing. You deserve better than always looking over your shoulder. Do I? The question slipped out unbidden. Sometimes I wonder if this is just penance for defending yourself. No, his voice was firm. No one deserves to live in fear, Sarah. Especially not you. They stood in silence for a long moment, the night sounds of the ranch, distant cattle, the occasional snort of horses in the corral filling the space between them. I'm afraid, Sarah finally confessed. Not just of them finding me, but of staying. Of caring about this place, these people. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Of caring about you. Kieran turned to face her fully. Why does that frighten you? Because caring means having something to lose, or something to gain. He stepped closer, not touching her, but near enough that she could feel his warmth. Sarah, I know we haven't known each other long, but some things don't need time to be certain. Kieran, let me finish. His eyes held hers in the moonlight. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that you could have a life here. A real life, not just another temporary hiding place. A horse's whinny from the direction of the road interrupted the moment. Kieran tensed, his hand instinctively moving to the gun at his hip. Stay here, he said, his voice suddenly all business. Sarah watched as he moved silently toward the bunkhouse, waking 2 ranch hands with a low whistle. The 3 men spread out, weapons drawn, as the sound of approaching horses grew louder. Heart pounding, Sarah retreated to the shadow of the porch. Minutes stretched like hours until finally Kieran returned, his expression relieved. "It's Mr. Crawford, back from Denver," he explained, "and he's brought someone with him, a federal marshal." The next morning found them gathered in the Crawfords' dining room. Sarah, Kieran, the Crawfords, Mayor Thompson, who had ridden out at first light, and Marshal James Wilson, a stern-faced man with intelligent eyes. "I've reviewed the evidence, Mr. Crawford provided," the marshal said, addressing Sarah directly. "And I've received telegrams from Philadelphia confirming your account. Edward Harrington has a record of complaints against him, though his father's influence has kept them quiet until now." Sarah hardly dared to breathe. "What does that mean for me?" "It means, Miss Blackwood, that you acted in self-defense. No charges are warranted." The marshal's face softened slightly. "Furthermore, I've issued orders for the bounty hunters to cease pursuit. The Harringtons have been informed that any further harassment will result in federal charges against them." "Is it really that simple?" Sarah asked, disbelieving. "Not simple, no. Mr. Crawford's connections helped considerably, as did the sworn statements from Harrington's previous victims once they learned they weren't alone." The marshal stood. "You're free to live your life, Miss Blackwood. No more running." The reality of it washed over Sarah in waves throughout the day. No more running. No more looking over her shoulder. No more leaving just as she was beginning to feel at home. That evening, Kieran found her by the corral, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in hues of gold and pink. "You'll be able to go back to teaching," he said, leaning on the fence beside her. "The children have missed you this past week." "I've missed them too." Sarah turned to face him. "Thank you, Kieran, for everything." "I didn't do much. Mr. Crawford, you believed me," she interrupted. "When I couldn't even believe in myself, you made me stand and face what I was running from." A smile tugged at his mouth. "Stubborn, aren't I?" "Persistent," she corrected, finding herself smiling back. "It's a quality I've come to admire. Just one of my many fine attributes," he teased, then grew serious again. "What will you do now, Sarah?" She looked back toward the mountains, considering. "Stay, teach, see what it's like to build a life in one place. Here, in Willow Creek." "Yes," she met his gaze steadily, "if that's all right. More than all right." His hand found hers on the fence rail, warm and calloused. "But fair warning, if you stay, I intend to court you properly. Dinner at the hotel restaurant, Sunday walks after church, the whole business." Sarah felt warmth spread through her chest. "I might be amenable to that." "Might be," his eyebrow raised in challenge. She amended, squeezing his hand. "I am amenable to that." 3 months later, as autumn painted the aspen trees gold around Willow Creek, Sarah stood on the schoolhouse steps watching her students file out for the day. The Crawford twins lingered, as they often did, helping to clean the chalkboard and straighten desks. "Miss Blackwood," 10-year-old James Crawford asked as he collected forgotten pencils. "Are you really going to marry Mr. Kieran?" Sarah felt her cheeks warm. Though Kieran had indeed been courting her openly since that day at the ranch, they had only recently begun discussing marriage. "That's a rather personal question, James. But everyone's talking about it," his twin Michael chimed in. "Ma says it's just a matter of time. Does she now?" Sarah tried to sound stern but couldn't keep the smile from her voice. "Well, that's between Mr. Prescott and myself. He's building onto his cabin," James informed her importantly. "Pa says a man doesn't add a second bedroom unless he's planning on filling it. That's quite enough, boys." Sarah shooed them toward the door. "Your mother will be wondering where you are." After they'd gone, Sarah tidied her desk, smiling to herself. It was true that Kieran had been working on his small cabin at the edge of the Double Diamond property. And it was true that they had been spending more and more time together: dinners, church socials, long rides through the golden countryside. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew her to the window. Kieran dismounted in front of the schoolhouse, his tall figure familiar and dear to her now. These afternoon visits had become a routine, one Sarah looked forward to more than she cared to admit. "Heard the Crawford boys were spreading rumors again," he said as he entered, hanging his hat on the hook by the door as if he belonged there. News travels fast, Sarah replied, tidying papers that didn't need tidying. Small town. Kieran approached her desk, his expression serious. Does it bother you, the talk? Sarah considered this. 6 months ago, any attention would have terrified her. Now she found she didn't mind. No, she answered honestly. Though I do wonder what they'll say when they learn you've never actually asked me. A slow smile spread across Kieran's face. Is that right? Well, I'd hate to disappoint the good people of Willow Creek. He came around the desk, taking her hands in his. Sarah Blackwood, I've been falling in love with you since the day you hid behind that water trough with a derringer in your hand. Sarah laughed softly. Not my finest moment. I disagree. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. It was the moment I met the bravest woman I've ever known. Kieran, let me finish. His eyes held hers, earnest and warm. I know you've been hurt. I know trust doesn't come easy for you, but I'm asking you to trust me with your heart, just as I'm trusting you with mine. Sarah felt tears gathering in her eyes. I don't deserve this. After everything, Sarah, he interrupted gently, you deserve every happiness this world has to offer, but selfishly I'm only concerned with offering you mine. He lifted one hand to brush a tear from her cheek. Marry me, build a life with me, let me love you the way you deserve to be loved. I don't deserve love, she whispered, the last of her defenses crumbling. The cowboy smiled, the expression transforming his whole face. You deserve mine. In that moment, standing in the late afternoon sunlight streaming through the schoolhouse windows, Sarah Blackwood finally stopped running. She rose on tiptoe and pressed her lips to Kieran's, feeling his arms encircle her, strong and steady. Yes, she murmured against his mouth. Yes, I'll marry you. Spring came early to Willow Creek the following year. The meadows around the town bloomed with wildflowers, and the creek that gave the settlement its name ran high with snowmelt from the mountains. On a perfect Saturday in May, Sarah Blackwood became Sarah Prescott in a ceremony at the white steepled church. The entire town turned out, filling the pews and spilling onto the front steps. Mrs. Crawford had sewn Sarah's dress herself ivory satin with lace trim that had once adorned her own wedding gown. Never seen Kieran look so nervous, Mr. Crawford chuckled as he escorted Sarah down the aisle in her father's stead. Man's broken wild horses calmer than he is today. But when Sarah reached the altar where Kieran waited, his hands were steady as they took hers. His eyes never left her face as they spoke their vows, his voice clear and certain as he promised to love, honor, and cherish her all the days of his life. The reception was held in the churchyard, with tables groaning under the weight of food prepared by every woman in town. Children darted between the adults, the Crawford twins leading a game of tag that threatened to topple the cake table until Mrs. Crawford intervened. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grass, Kieran led Sarah away from the celebration toward the waiting buggy that would take them to their cabin, their home. Happy, Mrs. Prescott? He asked, helping her into the seat. Sarah looked back at the gathering, at the schoolchildren waving, at Mrs. Crawford dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, at Mayor Thompson raising a glass in salute. Yes, she said, and meant it with her whole heart. Happier than I ever thought possible. Kieran settled beside her, taking the reins. It's just the beginning, you know. Sarah leaned against his shoulder as the buggy pulled away from the church, her past finally behind her, her future stretching bright and full of promise before them. I know, she said softly. And I can't wait to see what comes next.